Hi everyone, hope you're all well today. So let's do the chanting straight away. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami, Tadayampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Tadayampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Tadayampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May they be free from suffering and its causes. May they never be parted from the happiness beyond suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment to the near, and aversion from the far. I shall cause this. Great compassionate Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every types of offerings, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all of my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in all the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for all sentient beings. I dedicate the virtues of myself and others to the great enlightenment. However innumerable all sentient beings are, I vow to save them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Tayata gati gati parasum gati bodhiso. Tayata gati gati parasum gati bodhiso. Tayata gati gati parasum gati bodhiso. So now get yourself comfortable for some meditation practice. Just remind you that the reason we do it in this format is so that we get some chanting practice to absorb the mind with the Dharma, and also some meditation practice as well. Of course, it includes freeing the body from tension, brings your mind inside. Then you have the breath meditation to develop more and more concentration, more clearer mind. Then we have the loving kindness meditation to develop loving kindness. And at present, of course, we have the giving-taking meditation to develop more and more compassion. So there's a specific reason why we do it like this. And then, of course, have the Dharma talk at the end. Some people said to me over time, oh, we prefer to have longer Dharma talk. Other people saying, oh, no, we really like the meditations. So I keep it in this format to please everybody as much as I can. Even though at the moment, because we're doing that extra meditation, the giving-taking meditation, I think we're having maybe a little bit less than 20 minutes Dharma talk. So what we'll do in the coming weeks is we'll start to drop that meditation, because we're up to verse 7 now, where this technique is taught as part of the way and the methods to develop this compassion, to realize the bodhicitta. And so in a few weeks' time, we'll actually drop that when we get onto the 8th verse. Okie dokie. So, in fact, I may bring in some contemplation meditation on the no-self of phenomena, the illusion-like phenomena, you could say, mirage-like. Okay, so now forget everything I just said, as I say often, and let's get to the meditations. So bring your mind inside your body. And from the bottom, from the tips of your toes, all the way up your legs, and up to your shoulders, then down to the tips of your fingers, and then to the top of your head. Release the tension as you focus on different parts of the body. Release the tension from that part. So let's practice like this for a short while. And now scan your body once more, just to see if there's any leftover tension that you can release. And when you've done this, bring your focus, place your mind initially at the tip of your nose. And of course, the object of the meditation is the breath. Feeling of the breath as you breathe in your nose, past your throat, past your chest area, all the way into your lungs. They expand as they fill with the air. Then they compress as you breathe out. The air then leaves your nose again. Okay, and then breathing in and breathing out, and focusing on the feeling of the breath as you do this. All we have to do now physically is sit here in this nice posture, comfortable posture for yourself, and breathe. And mentally, all we have to do is to focus on the breath. And when the mind wanders, you utilize the antidotes and place your mind back onto the breath. You can also add the extra technique of counting the breaths, 1 to 10. One in breath, one out breath is 1, and so on and so forth. But if you get distracted while counting towards 10, then go back to 1 at that time. So as alluded to, if thoughts arise or any mental activity arises, you get distracted, then recognize that, and then let it go naturally by replacing your mind back onto the breath. Don't grasp at it. Don't cling to it. Don't try to force it away or deny it, but recognize it, and then let it go by replacing your mind onto your breath. And if your mind starts to become a little bit dull or sleepy, then wake it up by replacing your mind onto your breath more brightly. So let's practice like this in silence for a little bit. So now we can feel pleased with ourselves for engaging in the practice. And let's fill ourselves with universal loving kindness. If you like, you can utilize the technique of visualization. Visualize that you fill your whole being with the white light. This represents the universal loving kindness, or white nectar if you prefer. Or just go with the feeling is fine too. So let's fill ourselves with universal loving kindness, which includes friendliness, forgiveness, appreciation, gratitude, and so on. Fill yourself with so much loving kindness now that it radiates outwards, initially to your loved ones, family and friends, and fills them with the universal loving kindness too. May they be happy, free from suffering. May they be peaceful. And now also radiate your loving kindness to strangers, filling them with it as well. May they also be happy, free from suffering, and be peaceful. Now also include those you may regard as enemies. Fill them with a loving kindness. May all of these three types of people from your own perspective have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. And may they be peaceful. Now let's radiate this loving kindness out further and further, distance-wise, initially around your immediate area, to all living beings now. The ones that live in the waters, on the land, fly throughout the air. All sentient beings, whether weak or strong, great or small, short or tall, seen or unseen, near or distant, born or to be born. May they all be happy, free from suffering, and be peaceful. All the sentient beings born from eggs, wombs, moisture, through transformation, whether you know about them or not. And now let's increase our loving kindness and radiate it out even further and further distance-wise, now throughout your whole state or county. And other states and counties throughout your whole country, to all of the living beings. And now also include all other countries as well. Actually, initially, those you're familiar with and have an affinity towards, those you're indifferent towards, and also those that, whatever reason, you have some negative feelings towards. And also have your loving kindness pervade throughout all of the oceans until it radiates throughout this whole planet, down to the core of the earth, to the outermost atmosphere, to all living beings in this world. May they all be happy, free from suffering, and be peaceful. And now beyond this world alone, radiate your loving kindness out throughout this whole solar system. And other solar systems throughout the galaxy. and all of the galaxies throughout this known universe, until your loving kindness pervades throughout infinite space without limit, generated in your own heart, now radiating beyond limit throughout infinite space. Once again, feel very pleased with yourself. And now we'll switch techniques. Let us develop more and more compassion by practicing the giving-taking meditation, or in Tibetan, Tonglen. First of all, bring to mind all of the suffering and difficulties of living beings. Generate the mind of Bodhicitta, this altruistic intention to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Now imagine or visualize all sentient beings in front of you. And we will take their suffering from them, free them from the suffering, utilizing the visualization and the intention. At the same time, decreasing our ego and also our self-centeredness. Giving away all of our happiness and goodness to bring them happiness. And also imagining them on the path to enlightenment. And we also give up attachment. So as you breathe in, take the black smoke from the heart centers of all sentient beings in front of you into your heart center, melting away your ego and self-centeredness. Breathing in the black smoke, breathing out the white light, all of your goodness, give it to others. It leaves your heart center and enters into the heart centers of all sentient beings. So let's practice in silence like this for a short while. So now we can feel pleased with ourselves. Always feel pleased with yourself, okay? Even if you do something wrong, recognize it and practice the 4 powers of purification. And then be pleased with yourself again and rejoice. And rejoice in the rejoicing. So on. So now let's do the dedication prayer. Due to this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of the Buddha, so that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And may the precious view of shunyata, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. So, as mentioned, we're up to verse number 7 now of the 8 verses of thought transformation. Of course, we've already covered it in quite a bit of detail in the overviews. And also by practicing this Tonglen meditation, especially one class where I actually, almost all of the class was actually me giving commentary, instruction on how to practice this, utilizing the in-breath, the out-breath, but also the other technique of just visualizing the beings in front of you, similar to the way we do the loving kindness meditation. And then, giving all of the white light, happiness, goodness for a while, and then switching that to taking the suffering, and on like that. Okay, so there's a whole class of it, basically. And so I do have quite a lot of point notes for my commentary on this verse 7, some of which are my own words, put into my own wording of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's teachings, which were really good when I reread them. So I will mention those to you, not as long, obviously, and we can get through this as quick as possible without rushing. Okay, so there are 6 pages of point notes, but some of the commentary we've gone through quite quickly, depending on how much explanation I feel that I need to give for each point note. Okay, so some of it we actually went through like half a page for a class, some of it 2 pages for a class, another one maybe 1 paragraph, so it depends. Okay, speaking off the top of my head for the commentary. That's why I write these point notes, so that I don't forget any points. That's why they're called point notes, I guess, or maybe not. So anyway, as mentioned last week, this verse summarizes all of the previous 6 verses. The practice, the generating and the practice of bodhicitta, the altruistic intention of great compassion, that we have discussed in depth, these previous 6 verses, okay? This verse presents a specific Buddhist practice known as the practice of giving and taking, or taking and giving. And so, as you know, we've actually done about 6.5 months now or more. I think actually about 7 months almost. We started, I think it was the first Saturday of February. And so that's almost 7 months of commentary on these 8 verses. And of course, so now we've been doing, for almost 7 months, we've been doing this Tonglen practice. So hopefully you've memorized it now and you can put it into your practice every day. See the goodness in it, see the benefit it brings, opening your mind, decreasing attachment, letting go of this attachment to self as well. And then, wishing that others are happy, wishing that they're on the path to enlightenment and eventually attain enlightenment, and also sort of freeing them from the sufferings, okay? Great heart of compassion. And so, like I mentioned, we have learned both techniques of this Tonglen. It's up to you what you feel happy doing. You can do both, you can do one or the other, or you can alternate if you like, okay? Can be quite creative in these types of meditations. It is by means of the visualization of giving and taking that we practice equalizing and exchanging ourselves with others. Okay, we can equalize and exchange ourselves with others by contemplation as well. But also this technique, I think, is this very powerful technique. And so we should practice this type of meditation. I've mentioned to you before that His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that he practices this meditation and has done so for most of his life every morning. Okay, so if His Holiness does it, if other Tibetan lamas do it, and other people, other great practitioners who practice these 8 verses and develop these 8 verses of thought transformation, anybody who does this, there's so many. So we too are doing this. We are joining in, but of course, exchanging ourselves with others, it's not to be taken literally. In fact, it's impossible anyway. In other words, if I want to exchange myself with you right now, then I'd have to become you. And then you can become me. No, it's not like that, but we equalize ourselves with others so we don't put ourselves above others and vice versa, that we balance it, develop a mind of equanimity, and we sort of exchange ourselves with others because, we experience suffering. We know about this suffering. Others also experience the suffering. We should develop the compassion for them. This way we benefit from developing more compassion and at the same time benefit others as well. Rather, it is a reversal of the attitudes one has towards oneself and others. It is exactly this, thought transformation. or you could say attitude transformation, transforming the mind to be more compassionate, more wise, okay, more loving, more giving, and so on, and less self-centered, less greedy, less angry, have less dislike and like, and so on, okay? Attachment and aversion, in other words. All right, so we are transforming our mind, utilizing this method and these Dharma methods, including the 6 paramitas that we spent 9 months going through. So we think that our so-called self is precious, is the most precious thing around, okay? To a certain degree, you could say it is, in a sense, because we're training our mind. We're utilizing our mind. Without our mind, then how can we purify the mind, for instance? But we need to equalize things. We think that our so-called self is precious, the core of our being, something that is really worth taking care of, to the extent that we overlook the well-being of others. So it's not about not caring for ourselves, but it's so that we don't overlook the well-being of other beings. Without those other beings, we cannot develop the true compassion, the infinite compassion based on the wisdom, okay? It's impossible to do that. Our compassion, if you want to still call it that, will be very limited. So we need other living beings. So we need to contemplate them. We need to contemplate the difficulties they go through and develop compassion to help them be free from these difficulties and help them to realize enlightenment for themselves as well. So themselves to develop this bodhicitta and to realize the supreme wisdom. So in contrast, our attitude towards others is often indifference, and we don't care in a sense, right? Even our loved ones sometimes, we don't bring them to mind, their well-being, because we're thinking about ourselves too much, At best, we may have some sort of care for or concern for them, for other beings, but this is often limited to a feeling or an emotion. It's not true compassion or care. So our loved ones, for instance, we love them, most of the time anyway, unless you're arguing with them or something, okay? Or maybe you disagree with each other or something like that. Then at that moment, maybe not so much. But generally, even if we have the care, until we, of course, realize this bodhicitta, then it's actually going to be based on, a little bit at least, on emotions, on some sort of mental feelings of pleasure, either pleasure, displeasure, or neutral feelings, okay? But mostly we don't have it seriously, it's just there, it's kind of fragmented a little bit. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Somebody gives you some nice food, maybe you do. Somebody takes your nice food, maybe you don't. We're fluctuating a little bit like that, okay? But the true nature of our mind actually is compassion. There's loving kindness, there's wisdom, equanimity, and all of these good qualities. That's the true nature. So what we're doing now is we're actually uncovering it. Just like if you have, I've mentioned this before, this example, if you have a diamond underneath a pile of rubbish, a pile of dirt, you have to uncover it for you to sort of realize the diamond or find the diamond. And that's the same with our enlightened nature. We're uncovering it right now. We're unveiling the Buddha nature, if you like to put it that way, okay? The point of this particular practice is to reverse or transform this attitude of self-grasping. I'm mentioning all of these point notes too, for when you review the class, because I know most of you do, then you can take notes yourself. You can memorize these verses, if you like, these short point notes. Maybe you can write them down to remind yourself in the future. Maybe you can write them down and then contemplate each one at a time. Maybe you do the vipassana, contemplation meditation, but really focus on these points, okay? The point of this particular practice is to reverse or transform this attitude of self-grasping and reduce the attachment we have to ourselves. Some of them I'm kind of repeating, utilizing different words. That's the reason I mentioned what I just mentioned. So maybe different ways to look at the same thing sometimes, utilizing different words and phrases and examples so that you get to know something better. And maybe one of them will resonate with you better, so that you utilize that one when you do the contemplation. And to consider the well-being of others as significant and important. Like mentioned kind of before, we don't normally think of it as significant or important. So we are transforming our mind now to think about others' well-being as significant and important, rather than not caring or having some sort of indifference towards that. When taking on practices of this kind, where there is a suggestion we take harm and suffering upon ourselves, we must consider them carefully and appreciate them in the proper context, okay? We don't take the suffering of others. We can't do that anyway, all right? So, but we want them to be free from this suffering, and we're developing more care for them. So we're developing more compassion ourselves, okay? Which will actually lead to more happiness. So understand the true purpose and meaning of the practice, the reason actually why we do it. Like I've mentioned many times before, there's three aspects we need to think about in everything we do in life. What's the purpose? That's number one. Number two, the methods on how to achieve the purpose, getting to know them, and then putting them into practice. Those three aspects. You could say purpose, techniques, means. It's another way to put it. And in fact, these Zoom classes started out, the very first class that I taught, that we actually recorded, this was the subject, okay, just to let you know. In fact, I'll share with you, I actually saw one of the old videos the other day and reposted it on Facebook. I think it was the first one that I had this laptop, or got to download Zoom onto the laptop. For the few classes prior to that, I was utilizing my mobile phone, and which was actually a new mobile phone at that time. And the picture was kind of pretty awful, pretty ordinary. But this time as well, I noticed that tanka here of Amitabha Buddha was over this side, and it was all crooked. So I hadn't kind of worked out my backdrop yet. I hadn't worked out that I actually had a camera that I could utilize to make it look better, before the classes. And then this Thai image here of Sakyamuni Buddha or Gautama Buddha was over there. And then there were some statues here, and it was all over the place. So I'm glad that I was able to look at it and go, you know what, that doesn't look very good. I think I need to make it more symmetric. And so just a little funny point I wanted to make. Anyway, so purpose, means, and to put it into practice. Now, I think I've probably lost my spot here. So the reason why we do it and practice it is to transform our mind to be more compassionate and more wise. What is suggested here actually is in the process of practicing our spiritual path. So it's actually the Dharma path. And part of the path, these methods, utilizing these methods, and learning to think about the well-being of others, then we should be totally prepared to take on certain hardships and even suffering. So this is another really important point that I've made before, that actually doesn't mean you are going to take on the hardship, sufferings, but you must be prepared and able to do so. This is having a very strong mind. I think I spoke about this while giving commentary on the paramita of effort or enthusiastic perseverance during the 6 paramitas commentary, okay? Really having that strong armor-like mind, actually realizing, yes, even if I have to go through so much difficulty, so much suffering, I'm willing to do so to free living beings from suffering. This way, we develop more and more compassion, okay? I won't give any more details than that. All right, so, but taking the suffering of others, we want them to be free from suffering. We're not taking it upon ourselves, literally, okay? So don't worry about that. These types of texts do not imply that you should hate yourself okay, or be harsh on yourself, even though it's some of the words may allude towards that if you take them literally. Now, these are teachings on how to lessen ego, to develop more compassion, develop more wisdom, lessen attachment, okay? So these texts are not, do not imply that you should hate yourself or be harsh on yourself or wish others and ourselves to have actually misery in a masochistic type of way, all right? We want to free ourselves from suffering, not to actually get it and increase it. It is important to know this is not the meaning or the purpose of this practice. 1 minute to go. Rather, we are working to transform our mind to be less self-centered and more compassionate. So that's 2 pages that we did today. I mentioned that. I think that's the most we've ever done in one class. So I think I'll just leave it there. We don't actually take on the suffering of others. Rather, we increase compassion and decrease ego and self-centeredness. So I'll pick it up from there next week. Take care of yourselves physically and mentally. Practice well. I rejoice in your goodness and the time we spend together. I look forward to seeing you next week. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya.